never thought a glass of red wine could end a marriage. But that's exactly what happened. At my father-in-law's 60th birthday party, in front of 50 guests, I accidentally spilled wine on his white shirt, and he punched me so hard that I tasted blood before I even realized I was on the floor. The room went silent. My wife screamed, and I stood there, humiliated, bleeding, while the man who was supposed to be my family glared at me like I'd just committed a crime. So tell me, was I wrong for what I did next? Would you have handled it differently? To understand how it got to that point, you need to know what my relationship with my father-in-law, Richard, was like from the beginning. Richard was the kind of man who believed respect meant fear. He had built a construction business from the ground up, and everyone in his family treated him like some untouchable king. My wife, Emily, grew up worshiping him. Dad sacrificed everything for us. She'd say whenever he criticized someone, or barked orders across the dinner table. And he did bark. He had this deep, booming voice that filled a room, and he used it often. From the moment I met him, I could tell he didn't think I was good enough for his daughter. I worked in marketing. I wore suits, not steel-toe boots. I talked about branding strategies instead of concrete and blueprints. He'd shake my hand too hard, hold eye contact too long, and then say things like, "So, when are you going to get a real job?" Always with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I brushed it off for Emily's sake. I loved her. We met in college, bonded over late-night study sessions and cheap pizza. She was kind, intelligent, and had this soft laugh that made my worst days better. When we got engaged, I knew marrying her meant marrying into her family too. I told myself I could handle Richard's ego. But over the years, the comments got sharper. At holidays, he'd call me city boy or joke about how I probably couldn't change a tire. When we bought our first house, he walked through it, tapping on walls like he was inspecting a cheap motel, and said, "Hope you didn't overpay. Market guys aren't known for smart investments." Everyone laughed. I forced a smile. Emily would squeeze my hand under the table afterward and whisper, "He doesn't mean it." But he did. I could see it in his eyes. He tolerated me because I married his daughter. That was it. So when Emily told me we had to attend his big 60th birthday bash at this upscale banquet hall downtown, I already felt the familiar knot in my stomach. This wasn't just a family dinner. It was a full-blown event. Catering, live band, open bar, slideshow of his achievements. Half the guests were business associates. The other half were extended family who idolized him. I wore my best suit. Emily wore this beautiful navy dress that made everyone stare when we walked in. Richard was in the center of the room, of course, holding court like he owned the building. Crisp white shirt, gold. Cufflinks, perfectly styled gray hair. When he saw us, he spread his arms dramatically. "There's my daughter." He hugged Emily tight. Then he turned to me. And the husband. He gave me a firm handshake, leaning in close enough that I could smell the whiskey on his breath. "Try not to embarrass yourself tonight." I laughed awkwardly, thinking it was just another one of his jabs. If only I knew. The night went on. Speeches were made. Stories were told about how Richard once fired a man on the spot for being 5 minutes late, as if that was heroic. People toasted to his strength and discipline. I stayed quiet, sipping my wine, counting down the hours until we could leave. About halfway through the evening, the band started playing louder music, and people crowded around the tables. I was standing near Richard, listening to him brag about a recent deal, when someone bumped into me from behind. It happened in a split second. My elbow jerked. The glass tilted. A deep splash of red wine cascaded directly onto his pristine white shirt. It was like watching a slow-motion disaster. The stain spread across his chest like a blooming flower. Conversation stopped. Music seemed to fade. I immediately grabbed napkins. "Oh my God, Richard, I'm so sorry. Someone bumped me. I didn't mean to." Before I could finish, his face turned a shade of red that matched the wine. "Are you kidding me?" he roared. "I'm so sorry. I swear it was an accident." And then it happened. His fist connected with my jaw so fast I didn't even see it coming. There was a crack, a flash of white in my vision, and suddenly I was on the floor. My mouth filled with the metallic taste of blood. I heard gasps. A woman screamed. Emily shouted my name. I touched my lip and saw red on my fingers. Actual blood hit the polished wooden floor of the banquet hall, mixing with the spilled wine. For a moment, no one moved. Richard stood there, chest heaving, staring down at me like I was dirt. "You ruined my shirt," he said, as if that justified everything. Emily dropped to her knees beside me. "Dad, what is wrong with you?" she cried. but even she sounded torn, like she couldn't fully process that her father had just assaulted her husband. Two of his business partners stepped forward, murmuring, Hey, let's calm down." Someone helped me up. My jaw throbbed. I could feel swelling already starting. I expected Richard to apologize, to say he lost his temper. Instead, he adjusted his stained shirt and muttered, "If you can't hold your liquor, don't drink." That was the moment something inside me shifted. We left early. Emily was shaking in the car, half crying, half defending him. He's under a lot of stress. The party meant a lot to him. You know how he is. "How he is?" I said, pressing a napkin to my lip. "He punched me, Emily." I know. It was wrong. "I'll talk to him." But I realized then that this wasn't just about a punch. It was about years of disrespect culminating in violence. And everyone in that room saw it. No one called the police. No one truly condemned him. They just excused it because that's who Richard was. The next morning, I woke up with a swollen jaw and a bruise blooming across my cheek. I looked at myself in the mirror and felt humiliated, angry. Not just at him, but at myself for tolerating it for so long. Emily said her father had texted her, not to apologize to me, to say I owed him for the cost of the shirt and the dry cleaning of the suit jacket. That was it. I asked Emily calmly if she thought what he did was acceptable. She hesitated. That hesitation hurt more than the punch. She said, "No, but he's still my dad." So that was the situation I was in. A man who assaulted me in public, a wife who couldn't fully stand up for me, and a family that would bury the incident to protect their patriarch. Before I tell you what I did next, I want you to pause for a second and ask yourself, if you were in my shoes, bruised and bleeding because of an accident, would you let it go? Would you swallow your pride to keep the peace? Or would you draw a line? Comment below what you would have done, because at that moment, I had to choose between protecting my marriage and protecting myself. I chose myself. On Monday morning, I went to the police station. I filed a report for assault. I had photos of my injuries. I had witnesses, 50 of them. When officers contacted Richard, he was furious. He called me immediately, his voice shaking with rage. "You ungrateful little, how dare you involve the police? How dare you hit me?" I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. Emily found out that evening. She was livid, not at him, but at me. "You're ruining everything," she said. "Do you know what this could do to his business?" I stared at her. "He ruined it when he punched me." The family exploded. Her mother called me dramatic. Her cousin said I was trying to extort him. Richard refused to apologize, insisting it was a reflex. But the legal process had started. His precious reputation was suddenly at risk. Word spread among his business associates. Some quietly distanced themselves. No one wants to work with a man who assaults his son-in-law at his own birthday party. The venue had security footage. It clearly showed the punch. Faced with potential charges and public embarrassment, Richard's lawyer reached out with an offer. He would publicly apologize and cover my medical expenses if I agreed not to press charges further. I agreed, but on one condition. The apology had to happen in front of the same family, members and business associates who witnessed the assault. A month later, we gathered again, this time in a much smaller, tense meeting. Richard stood in front of everyone, his jaw tight, pride visibly choking him. And he said the words, "I overreacted. I should not have hit him. It was wrong." It wasn't heartfelt. It wasn't warm, but it was accountability. The aftermath, though, cost me my marriage. Emily couldn't forgive me for putting her father through that. I couldn't forgive her for not standing by me when I was the one who was hit. We tried counseling. We argued in circles. Eventually, we both admitted what had been obvious since the night of the party. We were on different sides. The divorce was quiet but painful. I moved into a small apartment across town. Friends asked what happened. I told them the truth. Richard's business took a hit, but it didn't collapse. He still has his empire, but he also has a public record of assault and a story that follows him at every major event. As for me, my jaw healed. The bruise faded. What didn't fade was the clarity I gained. I learned that love without respect isn't enough, that staying silent to keep the peace can cost you your dignity, and that sometimes the messiest choice is the one that lets you sleep at night. So was I wrong? Should I have just accepted the punch and moved on to save my marriage? Or did I do the only thing a person with self-respect could do? If you were on my side like this video, if you think I went too far, tell me why in the comments. I genuinely want to know. And if you enjoy hearing real, raw stories about family drama and impossible choices, make sure you subscribe for more. Share your final thoughts on this whole mess below. I read every single comment. I'll see you all in the next story.